A new study shines a light on how romantic relationships break up. It finds married women are twice as likely as married men to take the first step towards divorce.
What people keep getting married? You know what I mean? Isn't anybody looking at the stats? What's it like, 3 out of 4 marriages go right down the drain now?
Today we're going to talk about marriage being a scam. Did y'all know that? Did y'all know marriage is a scam?
Marriage doesn't work out very often if you just look at the statistics of it.
No one hates marriage more than married people. When you hear a lot of them talk about their marriages, you're like, my goodness, should we call 911?
In your opinion, what is the hardest part of marriage?
Being married.
Is an open marriage a healthy alternative for couples to consider?
They're difficult as it is.
That's the truth.
Why would you want to bring somebody else into a relationship?
Right.
No!
Why didn't you get married?
Because it's stupid. I mean, who's happy with it? Everyone gets divorced.
So many marriages end in divorce. Like, think about the vows that you say, till death do us part. How many people say that? So it's just like people's words mean nothing. People are so non-committal in today's day and age.
Those guys that get married early, they never achieve what they should have achieved, and it doesn't work because he never becomes the man he could have.
You know, the science is clear. Men just want more sex than women do, and that's why that is one of the conflicts that often come up in relationships.
70% of those divorce filings, and the number one source of that divorce filing is no longer a viable provider.
Wow.
People think it's values or infidelity. It's not. It's almost always related to money.
Only cause of divorce, as far as I can see, is disconnection. Disconnection from your partner. And people disconnect from their spouse or their partner the same way they go bankrupt. Very, very slowly, and then all at once.
Amen. If I haven't had the chance to meet you, I go by Ant. I serve as the pastor here at Midtown 2-Notch. Since we have some guests here with us today, what we would love for you to do, especially if this is your first time gathering with us to worship, we would love for you to stop by our host team table on your way out or to be on your left-hand side. We would love for you to fill out a connect card for us just so that we can get to know you a little bit better and acknowledge the fact that you're here with us worshiping today. We're going to be in Ephesians chapter 5, specifically verse 33. I'll meet you there in just a few moments. Once again, I know I've said this a number of times throughout this sermon series, but if you're just jumping in midway through the sermon series, well, today is actually the last Sunday of this particular sermon series. But if you haven't been with us throughout, I do encourage you to go to midtown2notch.com/teaching. And listen to some of the previous sermons, especially if some of the stuff that I say today is a little bit confusing or difficult to understand. I believe that will help you out to kind of understand some of what we'll be getting into today. Also, before I get into the sermon today, I know we've talked a lot about marriage in this sermon series. We're doing an event that'll be a conversation and involve a lot of Q&A for those of us who are single in our church or around our church. We're calling it Let's Talk About Singleness. That's going to be on March 20th at 7 p.m. Again, March 20th at 7 p.m. It's actually going to be at the office building of our downtown church. So we're going to have this up on our website pretty soon. It'll also be in our weekly email, that we send out as well. So that'll be Let's Talk About Singleness. It's going to be on March 20th. We're actually doing that in place of the game night that we were going to be having this month. So no game night this month. Instead, we're having an event. We're calling it Let's Talk About Singleness. You'll be able to get more information on that. Just wanted to make sure you were able to save the date for that one. Again, March 20th, 7 p.m. for that one. Getting into the sermon and the text for today, one thing that I wanted to share is just an experience, as I've done multiple times throughout the sermon series, a little bit of my experience and the times I've been able to meet with couples, meet with husbands and wives. One of the things that I've very consistently noticed that was pretty baffling for me at first is oftentimes when I be meeting with the husband and the wife when they're coming for counseling, oftentimes they're coming because the wife has identified something that's challenging about the relationship, something oftentimes that's recurring, that's an issue for her. And then there's a difficulty with her getting her needs met within the relationship. And we'll make sure that she's able to communicate those things and we break all that down. And oftentimes I'll ask the husband, all right, well, what are you looking for? What are you desiring out of the relationship? And a lot of times he'll be like, I don't know. I mean, whatever needs to happen for this to go well, that's what I want. So what do I need to do? What needs to happen? And then oftentimes it takes getting into maybe a session or two before the husband will say anything to me about what his needs actually are, about what he is actually seeking in the relationship. Oftentimes, if I were to ask the wife, like, what are things that you desire specifically from your husband so that your needs in the relationship will be met? And this is going to sound like an exaggeration. It is not. Oftentimes, her list is about 3 to 5 times longer than his. And if I were to ask her, okay, well, what are things that you know of that you can do so that you are helping your husband be more satisfied in the relationship? Oftentimes, I've heard a lot of about 3 to 4, that's a good question. And about 5 or 6, I don't really know. And so what's happening that I've noticed is there seems to be a lack of awareness, and I would say on both parts, on the part of the husband and on the part of the wife, about what it actually is that the husband desires in the relationship. And I'm not trying to blame either party for why the dynamic is that way, but that is something that I have noticed as a big area of need oftentimes, is there seems to be a lack of understanding and awareness as to what the husband is desiring and what his needs are in their relationship. So today we want to look at specifically what the Bible calls wives to in marriage. What we'll look at is not many verses in Ephesians chapter 5 that talk about it, and so we'll focus more on applying what is pretty clearly and plainly said there in the text. So let's go ahead and jump in. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33, and we'll break down what we see here as far as specifically what is said to the wife, as we've already exposed a good bit what the passage says to the husband. Verse 33 reads, "However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband." See that she respects her husband. In the New American Standard Bible, the end of that verse reads, "The wife must see to it that she respects her husband." So to break that down, when it says to see to it, it means to ensure that it happens, to take responsibility for it happening, to treat it as a non-negotiable because it is something that must happen and must take place. It's a call to the wife to refuse to tolerate a marriage relationship or dynamic where the husband is not respected. It's to see to it that this takes place. And just as much as a wife might desire for the husband to make her feel loved in the relationship, she is called to have that same desire to ensure that he feels respected by her in the relationship. For the wives that are here today and future wives that are here, what I want to try to do is equip and empower and encourage you to faithfully see to it that you respect your husband. So I want you to know, and I want you to know that you can do that in ways that are very proactive, where you can be intentionally about doing things that are respectful and honoring to your husband. And the other way I'll approach this is things to stay away from so that you're not communicating disrespect or dishonor to your husband. So we'll start with what to avoid so that you're not communicating disrespect to your husband. And hear me on this. This was shocking to me. Have you all read in the Proverbs how strong the language is to wives as far as how they are to be respectful to their husbands? I mean, it's some of the stronger language that you will find, to the point it was pretty jarring for me even to read it. Proverbs 21 verse 9 says this. It says, "It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife." Proverbs 21:19 says it like this: "It is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman." The word quarrelsome, it means brawling, it means contentious, it means someone who is starting or instigating fights or arguments. And the word fretful, it speaks about someone who is so angry that they provoke others, maybe from their point of sorrow or spite or wrath or whatever it might be. Now, these verses, they're using figurative language. It's not literal, but the word of God is saying that it is better to live on the corner of the housetop or in a desert land than with a quarrelsome woman. And bear in mind, they lived in an agrarian society. Agrarian means they lived off the land. They lived through what they were able to grow, the crops they were able to grow, and off the animals that they often would herd. So for them to be in a desert land would be devastating. It would be a lifeless place for them to be. Proverbs keeps going. Proverbs 19 verse 13 says, "A foolish son is ruin to his father, and a wife's quarreling is a continual dripping of rain." So here's what it means by continual dripping of rain. Imagine that throughout this sermon, there was a leak in the roof and in the ceiling, and the whole sermon you just heard this. It will drive some of y'all crazy. It will drive some of y'all crazy. That is the author's point in this verse. that the quarrelsome wife is that continual dripping of rain that will almost drive you crazy. Proverbs 27:15-16 says this. Says it again, a continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. It says to restrain her is to restrain the wind or to grasp oil in one's right hand. And you might think it's impossible to restrain the wind or just hold a lot of oil in your hand. And that's the author's point, that the husband in some ways is trapped. There's nothing he can do about it because there's no way for him to stop her from responding to him in these ways. So to recap, it says for a husband to be in the house with a quarrelsome wife is like being subject to this inescapable sound of dripping rain. And it'd be better for a man to live outside of the house or in a desert land than in the house with her. Now, I didn't say that. That's in your Bible. Like, I didn't put it there. Like, I would never, just so we're clear with each other. To be quarrelsome is to be contentious. To be the kind of person that communicates in a way that leads to quarrels and fights. It's to allow your emotions to so get the better of you that you intentionally or unintentionally start fights and arguments and quarrels with the one or ones that you love. I obviously cannot speak from experience on what it is like to be a wife, but from the outside looking in, there's a part of me that thinks verses like this puts wives in a difficult spot. She's called to submit to her husband and follow his leadership, even though at times she's not going to agree with it. She's also called to not be quarrelsome if and when she does not agree with him. So is she just supposed to not advocate for herself and just quietly go along with whatever he says? And to answer that question, the answer to that question is no, she shouldn't do that. The head, to use the picture in Ephesians chapter 5, the head cannot function well without consistent feedback from the body. Right? There has to ongoingly be feedback and communication. The body has to be able to communicate when something is wrong to the head, that the head might be able to make the right decision. That's how the body works. So how does the wife communicate a strong and accurate disagreement in a way that is respectful and honoring to her husband? I want to spend a little bit of time answering that question. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 3 points on how to not disrespect your husband. First one is share vulnerable emotions instead of narratives. Share vulnerable emotions instead of narratives. This is one way that you can communicate in a way that helps to communicate and advocate for yourself without being quarrelsome and disrespectful to your husband. Let me give you an example to explain what I mean when I say narratives versus vulnerable emotions. Here's a way of communicating in a narrative. You're always making time for everything except me. You work late, you're always on your phone or doing this or that. You don't want anything to do with me. You don't care how I feel, and you don't make any time for me. That's a narrative. That's a narrative. Here's oftentimes the vulnerable emotions that are underneath that. I feel insecure in our relationship because I feel unprioritized. I fear that you don't care about me like you used to, or that you don't have strong feelings for me anymore. Is there anything you can think of that we can do to help me with that? Those two things describe the same situation in a very different way. One is a bit more quarrelsome, the narrative version. One is a bit more vulnerable that does not in nearly as much incite arguing or quarreling. I'll give you another example. Here's a narrative example. You're always putting stuff off and you're not doing what you said you're going to do. I can't count on you to do anything. That's a narrative. Here's the more vulnerable emotion. Hey, babe, I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed and stressed lately. When you didn't do the thing that you said you were going to do, I started really worrying about whether or not other important things were going to be able to get done. Then I started getting more overwhelmed and more stressed because I can't get all the things done. Is there anything that you can do to help with this? It's very accurately advocating for the needs that she has that are there without any amount of quarrelsome nature to the way she's communicating. I'll give you one more example. Narrative. Oh, so since you said what you want, that's what we got to do. Okay, whatever you say, what I want doesn't matter. It's all about you. Let's just do what you want to do. No one cares what I think. Let's just do what you want to do. More vulnerable emotions. Here's what's often underneath that. I feel extremely hurt because I feel very unheard and overlooked. And honestly, I feel secondary in the relationship. I feel unvalued because of how often we end up going with what you want to do, and I hate feeling this way. Do you have any thoughts on what we can do about that? Those are honest, they're direct, but they're not quarrelsome. It's honestly communicating. Here's why I want to focus on this. You got to think about the way when we talked about I think the first sermon in this sermon series about the way that men were designed when God created Adam. Adam had the responsibility of providing and protecting. The people who have an instinct to protect move to protect when they see something that they care about in a vulnerable position. So if you communicate, and thus they're wired to fight against whatever is putting you in the vulnerable spot. So oftentimes men are inspired by hearing about the vulnerability, or husbands, I should say, are inspired by hearing about the vulnerability of their wives as opposed to communicating in a way that's quarrelsome. Because for much of human history, the way that men protect and provide is by being able and willing to fight something, whether that's fight in a war or fight against an animal. In hunting is often how the nature of protecting and providing has been lived out by men in society and in history and in the world. So if you go to him, who to some degree at least, as a protector and a provider, has to be willing to fight in a way that's quarrelsome, in a way that leads to fighting, oftentimes what you'll get is him either fighting back or shutting down. He said, I don't want to fight against you, so sometimes it's just a shutdown, or sometimes it's fighting back against what you're saying. But communicating in a way that's vulnerable, communicating in a way that exposes what's actually going on, sitting time to learn yourself well enough to communicate what is actually going on deeply inside of you, helps you to communicate more accurately about yourself. The narrative is generally communicating about him. Communicating vulnerably is communicating about you. And if you don't know yourself well enough to know what's really going on, then you can't accurately advocate for yourself because you don't know yourself well enough. You haven't figured yourself out. You don't know what's really going on with you. So here's my recommendation. Wives, I made a cheat sheet for you to help you communicate in the most helpful way. I'm going to put it on the sermon page when this sermon is posted. It might not be on the page until about Tuesday, but I will put it on there. And what it has is a list of over 20 vulnerable feelings that I have seen from wives in times of counseling that I've seen that you can just look at. And my recommendation would be, before you even get to the conflict with him or bring up the issue with him, sit with it and ask yourself, am I experiencing any of these at the time? And explain the issue through those particular emotions so that you can communicate what's really going on without getting into anything that's quarrelsome in any way. So I made a cheat sheet for you. It'll be on the sermon page. The first one in how to not disrespect your husband is to share vulnerable emotions instead of narratives. Second point in how to not be disrespectful is to, what I refer to as, reject hyper-independence. Reject hyper-independence. Wives, I want you to think about this. The husband you are with is commissioned and commanded by God to nourish and cherish, aka take care of you. He will answer to God about how he has taken care of you. If you're in a Christian marriage, your heavenly Father has basically said to him through the word of God, I've given you my daughter and I'm entrusting you with the responsibility of caring for her. That's what's going on between him and God every day, moment by moment, right? That's a part of now how he follows and worships God. So if you are, talk to the wives, if you are hyper independent, that I don't want or need no man to take care of me, I'm good on my own, and thus you are resistant to any man trying to care for you because you think it makes you feel weak, you think it makes you look weak, or if you're hyper resistant to him leading in the home because you've given into this cultural narrative that all male headship is evil and wrong and oppressive, then you need to realize that you are making it more difficult for your husband to obey God and fulfill the call God has on his life. You are making it more difficult for him. I'll be honest, I feel really bad for some husbands. The husband has a God-given desire and responsibility to lead in a way that makes sure his wife is good. And some wives, because of some combination of pride or fear or insecurity or discontentment, just resist him at every turn. And I'm not saying that you have to say you like any idea he has that's problematic. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, you should definitely speak up when that is the case. But I'm saying if you're resistant because of pride or because of you hate giving up control or because you're never content with anything, you are making it harder for this man to obey God and follow God as he has been called to do. And sometimes I think that many wives don't realize just how fulfilling and rewarding it is for most husbands to do what he can do to make sure his wife feels good. Most husbands that I've talked to, it's like, that is my dream. Like, I just want to be able to serve well, and I want my wife to be good and healthy and happy and joyful and at peace. And then know that she is receptive to me leading in that direction and appreciative of that. Wives, if you want to keep yourself from dishonoring or disrespecting your husband, reject hyper independence. And as I said in the previous sermon, let him care for you. So how to not disrespect your husband? Share vulnerable emotions instead of narratives. Reject hyper independence. And I would say, I've heard this so often from husbands, minimize public critique and comparison. Minimize public critique and comparison. As I've made the case throughout the sermon series, men were designed with an emphasis on exertion and using effort to produce good and cause a flourishing of everything that's been entrusted to him. So when a wife publicly criticizes a husband, specifically in the area of weakness, in a way that communicates that he is incompetent, it often comes across as if she is saying, the thing that you were created and designed to do, you are incompetent to do. The thing that God made you for is like, I don't know, maybe this husband over here was good, but mine was defective. Like, he's not able to do the thing that he was designed and created for. Is how that especially public critique, publicly putting down your husband around others. It's like saying, I know God made men for X, Y, and Z, but I don't know, something's wrong with mine. That critique, that comparison can destroy a man's confidence. I really believe many wives are pretty oblivious to the impact that their words often have, because I've seen wives publicly criticize their husband for him not leading more assertively and more confidently and all that, and then not realize that as she's criticizing, she's part of the reason why he is that way. That she's criticizing him for being in a way that she contributed to him being. I believe oftentimes it's something that goes unseen because men, we don't like to talk about it. We don't want to open up and share that that's what's actually going on. It makes me want to ask some wives a question. Do you understand that being a helper, that word from Ezer from Genesis chapter 2 that I talked about a few weeks ago, is a very high calling? It's a very high calling. The term Ezer from Genesis chapter 2, more often than not in the Bible, it refers to God. God's people experience victory because he is their Ezer. He is their help. If your words are tearing him down, you need a fresh revelation and realization of what it is to be an Ezer. Your words should give your husband life and strength and courage. They should encourage him. So I think a call to wives here. And here's what I'll ask you. I will ask your wives for you to write this down, if you're able to do so, if that's helpful for you. Ask him if your words cause him to gain confidence or lose confidence. If you really want your marriage to go well, ask him, do your words cause him to gain confidence or lose confidence? And what words have you shared that have moved him in either direction? If your words are causing him to lose confidence and be discouraged, you really need to stop and consider the weightiness of the fact that God made you as an Ezer, that God has given you this design and responsibility to be a godly helper in his life. If you want good for your marriage, ask him for examples of how your words have communicated honor and respect to him in ways that your words have communicated dishonor and disrespect to him. If you really, really want your marriage to be good, tell him that you'd like for him to regularly let you know anytime you do something that is disrespectful or dishonoring to him. Proverbs chapter 31, verses 10 through 12 says this. An excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. So the question for the wife is, am I using my words to do good and not harm? Are my words honoring as opposed to dishonoring? Or does his heart, or another question, does his heart trust you because you do him good and not harm? And the last part of that verse, it paints a beautiful picture that I think needs some time and attention. It says, she does him good. It doesn't just say she doesn't disrespect him. It doesn't just say she doesn't do him bad. It says she does him good. The call for the wife is not simply to not be disrespectful, but it is to see to it that she respects him. The call isn't just to avoid things that are disrespectful. It is also to proactively do things that are respectful and honoring to him. I want to give a few things real quickly or pretty quickly on how to be proactive about respecting and honoring your husband. First thing is learn what makes him feel respected. Learn what makes him feel respected. Sometimes a better word to actually help sometimes the husband and the wife to understand this, I would say, is honor is probably a word that strikes what the verse is talking about a little bit more, like what makes him feel honored by you. And because I've asked this question to a lot of husbands, and a lot of husbands don't know how to answer this question. Like, just really don't, I don't know what it is. If we've been trained not to think or not to have an expectation that we'd be honored in a relationship, I'm not 100% sure what the reason is. Most husbands that I've talked to maybe can come up with two things. So here's what I want to do. I want to try to give you some things to consider. You don't have to write these down because I told you I got a cheat sheet for you. This is going to be on the cheat sheet on the website as well. Things that this is a list of 10 things, just personally from me, that my wife does that helps me feel respected. The first one's kind of hard to explain. When she moves towards me and kind of, husbands, maybe you have better words for this than me. When she moves towards me and kind of like hugs my arm, like one of these, I don't really know how to do it, and it like leans into it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what manner of magic is taking place when she does that. Like I can't put my finger on it. I don't even believe in magic, but it caused me to feel incredibly respected and trusted. When she puts her phone down when I start talking to her, when she communicates her differing opinion in a way that comes across as like, these are my thoughts, but ultimately I respect your leadership. When she publicly speaks highly of what I do for her, when she acknowledges to me that she knows how much energy, work, effort, and love I put into making sure our family is good. When she expresses that anything about my character or something I do that she's blown away by or that is impressive to her. When she does things that I ask her to do to take care of herself. When she says to my kids, well, your dad is the head of the house. When she is very receptive and open to me sexually, and I'm not going to say anymore so I don't lose my job. And when she doesn't, this is a thing that's probably more so for me, when she doesn't push back when I tell her that I just need to take some time to myself to recharge, because she trusts that I'm not being selfish, but I'm genuinely trying to recharge myself. So those are 10 things from me. The list that I have online in the cheat sheet, I think it has about 25 things. Or definitely over 20 things on there. And wives, this is what I would ask and encourage you to do. Bring the list from the website to your husband and just ask him which one of these will work for him. Which one of these works for him? All of them won't work for him. All of them won't. Ask him which ones would. And I'm not even saying you have to do all of them. But just know that is a bit of a roadmap for you to being able to obey the verse that God calls wives to in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33. So there's a cheat sheet for you. Download it and use it, and I pray it'll be helpful for you. So in respecting and honoring your husband, one, learn what makes him feel respected. The second one is, I just like to call it, give him his flowers. Give him his flowers. Here's what I mean by that. I was on Instagram one time, and the wife, or one wife, I think, it was around Valentine's Day, and she asked the question to husbands. She was like, what's the male equivalent of flowers, she said. She was like, most wives, not all wives, most wives appreciate if they receive flowers. What's the thing that if most men get, it would be a similar thing, they would greatly appreciate it. And then here's how I responded to the post. I said, and this is completely free, take 5 minutes and just suspend your imagination for a second and pretend that the Martians are real and they came and just like warp beamed your husband up out of here, right? Like he's gone, the Martians are real, they came and got him. Take 5 minutes and write down what difficult and challenging emotions you would feel if that were to take place. Just 5 minutes. Every emotion that comes to your mind that you would feel you feel afraid? Would you feel alone? Would you feel unsure of how you're going to continue on? Would you feel like, I don't know who's going to be my IT person now, or I don't know who's going to fix the toilet or whatever? Like whatever negative emotions that you would feel as a result of him not being there, take 5 minutes, just write them down on a notepad. After that, take another 5 minutes and write down, in light of that, what good emotions do you feel because he is in your life? What beneficial emotions, what positive emotions do you feel because he is in your life? And just write them down. Take 5 minutes, whatever comes to your mind, just write them down. And then for the last 5 minutes, I want you to sit with him and hear my heart on this. Sit with him in a way that if another woman sat with him like that, you'd have a problem with it. I'm not saying it's got to be sexual. I'm just saying it might be a look, it might be a level of closeness, whatever that is. Just sit with him in a way that you got a real problem if another woman is sitting with him that way, right? What I'm saying is in a space that only you occupy in this life. Sit with him in that way and read the list to him. Read both lists. It'll take 15 minutes tops. 5 minutes to write the first part, 5 minutes to write the second part, 5 minutes to communicate. That's how you give a man his flowers. And I'll say this. Another way to think about it is like this. And I know that our church in general is good at this because you guys are fantastic at honoring me. I literally have like stacks of letters throughout the years and cards of you guys expressing appreciation to me. And here's why I bring that up. Because I believe if you thought about it like this, what would our church do if we wanted to honor Aunt as a pastor of our church? What would we do? Maybe write some cards, maybe give a gift, maybe some type of public acknowledgement. Like I've seen you guys be great at this for 12 plus years at this point. I've seen you guys be great at this for 12 plus years. So that's why I say I think the word honor is often better even than respect, because I think it communicates something different in our mind. You're just asking yourself, what does it look like for me to honor my husband? How might I do that? I've communicated this concept before. And one of the responses that I've gotten before is like, yeah, but I know that he knows that I appreciate him. Like he knows that I respect him. Like, so I feel like we're good. He knows that. And the response I would say to that is the same thing that I would say to the husbands, except on the other side of the coin. You can't rest on the fact that your wife knows you love her. Like you continue to show her that you love her time and time again. You can't be up in here like, well, I married her, didn't I? Like she knows that I love her. You can't be up in here like that. Like we know that's not how this works. That's not how this works. The same way for wives, you can't rest on I married him. He knows of course I appreciate. Of course he's valuable to me. We're together. That's not how this works when you're trying to cultivate the best marriage that you can possibly have. The goal is for the husband to be the world's best expert in making his wife feel loved, nourished, and cherished. And the goal is for the wife to be the world's best expert in making her husband feel respected and honored. Those are the goals. Respecting and honoring your husband. Learn what makes him feel good. Give him his flowers. And 3, I would say, see it as worship to God. See it as worship to God. To the wife that has ever thought or one day will think, I don't know if I can do that. Or, well, he isn't nourishing and cherishing me, so why should I and how can I respect and honor him when he's not living in a way that I find to be honorable? To the wife that thinks, Aunt, but you don't know my marriage and how he treats me. My encouragement to you, while acknowledging that I'll never truly know what that is like, my encouragement to you is to remember that when God tells us to treat people a certain way or respond to people in a certain way, whether or not we obey his commands to treat people in a certain way is more about our relationship with God than it is about our relationship with that person. I'll say that again. When God tells us to treat people in a certain way, whether or not we treat them that way is more about our relationship with God, because the command is coming first from him. It is more about our relationship with God than it is about our relationship with the person that he's telling us how we should treat. Does that make sense? Which means a wife submitting to her husband's leadership is more about submitting to God than it is about submitting to her husband. Which means respecting your husband is more about respecting God than it is about respecting your husband. Which means honoring your husband is more about honoring God than it is about honoring your husband. I want to read you what Peter has to say about this in 1 Peter chapter 3, starting at verse 1. He says, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. So the point is, if he is not following God, if he is not being the husband God created him to be, It says that they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives. Verse 2, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Peter wants you to know, I think Peter wants you to know the power of being an Ezer. That God can work through your respect and conduct to transform your husband is what the word of God is saying. Verse 3 says, do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. The quiet spirit part, he's speaking, I believe he's speaking more about not being quarrelsome than he's speaking about the volume that you have when you talk. Like he's not saying you need to talk in a whisper when he's talking about having a quiet spirit. He's talking about not being quarrelsome and being respectful and that kind of thing. So he says practicing these things at the end of verse 4, he says it's very precious to God. He doesn't say it'd be very precious to your husband. He doesn't say this is exactly what your husband wants. He's saying this is precious to God, that there's a vertical aspect to this. That there's a vertical aspect, that the mindset, he's taking your eyes, or whoever he's writing to, he's taking their eyes off of the conduct of their husbands and putting their eyes on God and saying, this is a way of honoring him. That word precious means of being of high value. He's saying God cares tremendously about this, that this is valuable to God. Essentially, the call here is if your husband is not moving and interacting with you in a way that is worthy of respect from your perspective, which again is what 1 Peter 3 is talking about. He's saying you are to still see that you are to still see to it that you respect your husband because of two reasons. He says because God can actually use that to transform your husband. And he says essentially it's a form of honoring God. And to the wife that feels like she wants to reject what God is saying about wives respecting their husbands, my encouragement is to remember a little bit of what I talked about last week when I talked about how trustworthy God is. My encouragement is to remember that these commands are coming from the God that created you in his image, that came to earth to connect you with him, to connect us with him, that died to pay the penalty for our sins, that is now alive and one day will free all of us from all suffering and all pain and all crying and all hurt in his forever kingdom. And my only point in saying that means that means we can trust him. That means that we can trust any command that he has, that if he tells us to do something, it's because he is good. How do we know that? Because he is for our good and he is good. He is not capable of giving a command that is not good because goodness is a part of his nature. Goodness is a part of who he is. So if there's anything you ever see in the Bible that God is calling you to do, then you know that it is good for you to do. He lived a life worthy of honor, even if your husband is not doing so. And my encouragement is to trust him and honor him, as 1 Peter says, with your respectful and pure conduct. Family, I'll pray with me.